Hello and welcome back to So Simple. Today we are going to be learning how to make a male shirt. This is for a child, but you can also use the method to make for an adult. It's a standard shirt with a standard collar. As you can see, you can either make it into a long sleeve or a short sleeve shirt. I'm going to be taking you through how I cut and sew this in this class. If this is something you like to learn, kindly stay tuned. So for this, you're going to be needing your fabric for both front and back. For the front, you're going to be adding your button allowance, and then for the length, the back is going to be longer than the front. You will see why as we go on in the video. So for the allowance, I'm going to be folding. You can see I'm folding 2 inches for my button allowance in front, and then I'll place it on the back. You can see the difference we have between the front and back length. So the first thing we're going to do is to shape out the shoulder. So after shaping our shoulder, we are going to now move the length back. So for that, I'm marking 1.5 inches, and then I'm connecting it, as you can see. So I'll cut it out, and once I cut it out, I can now align the hem of the shirt. Can you see how it's folding towards the front? Yes, so that is why the front length is shorter than the back length by 2 inches. So now we have successfully shaped out the shoulder for both front and back. We are going to mark the shoulder of your customer. So after that, you're going to mark your neck width and neck depth. So for the neck width, I'm using 2 inches by 2.5 for the front, and then 2 inches by 1 inch for the back. So I'm going to go ahead and connect it. So for the back, you can see that the fold over is 1 inch, so I'll just cut that part. You don't need to measure it. Now you are going to cut your front neckline. Please, when you are cutting it, make sure that you just cut the front, you raise it up, don't cut the back together with it. So after that, you're going to mark our armhole length, our half length. On the armhole line, you're going to mark your chest divided by 2 and add your seam allowance. You mark your waist divided by 2 and your seam allowance, as well as your hip, and then you connect it. So once you connect it, you take your armhole cuff and connect your armhole for both front and back together, and then you go ahead and shape the hem of your shirt, and then you cut it out. It is that simple. So I'm going to shape it, and then I'll go ahead and cut it out just like that. So you have your front and your back. So for the front, I'm notching where my button allowance starts so that I will know how to fold it, and then I'm just reshaping the back neckline so that it can be curved. So I want to have a back yoke for this. So for that, I'm folding my fabric into two, and then I'm cutting out the yoke. It's just like a small lining, so you can stop wherever it is you want to stop, but mine is stopping around the mid armhole area. So this is what the back yoke looks like. So the next thing you will do now is to go ahead and create your button placket. So I'll just fold in. Remember, I added 2 inches allowance, so I'll just fold 1 inch twice, and that is going to serve as my button placket. So once you fold this, you go ahead and iron your hairstay, and then you can sew it down or use your hemming gum to glue it down. So that is it for your button placket. So now we are going to be joining the shoulder together. So I have a facing just like you have seen. So I'm going to be using the facing to turn the shoulder so that it can be neatly finished. So I'll place my front and back shoulder on each other, and then I'm going to be turning with my facing so that by the time I'm done sewing it, it's going to come out really neat. Can you see that? So you can pin it down before you sew, or you just take it to your sewing machine and sew. So I'm just pinning it so that you can see how it comes out. Everything is going to be neat. The facing is going to turn the rough edge for you. So once you sew it, the next thing is to sew down your facing just like that. So we're almost done. Once you do that, we are going to measure what we have for our sleeve, and then you cut out your sleeve. Mine is just a regular basic sleeve, so that is what I'm measuring. The length is 8 inches. I have folded in my allowance, and then I used my armhole to shape out the armhole. So you mark your sleeve hem and then connect it to your armhole, and then you go ahead and cut out your sleeve. So once you cut out your sleeve, you are going to hem the sleeve like that, as you can see, and then once you are done, you're going to sew it to your armhole. So the sleeve is sewn to the armhole now. it's time for us to close the side. So I'll just close the side and then sew from my armhole to the hem of the shirt. So the shirt is ready. The next thing to do is to cut out your collar. So for the collar, you're going to take your neckline together and measure what you have there. So you're going to bring your collar stay and take that measurement, that round neckline measurement that you took. I'm going to measure it. So now for my height, I'm using 4.5 inches for the height of my collar, and that is the width of the collar. So that is the space that I'm working with for this collar. So once you do that, the first thing you're going to create is your collar stand. So you mark 1 inch and then connect it to the midpoint of the collar, and then from there you mark your actual collar stand. I used 1 inch for mine and then I connected it. So you're going to shape the end of the collar stand just like that. So the main thing is to cut the main collar. So for that I marked 1 inch upward. Sorry, the camera is not capturing it. And then I connected it to where the collar stand stop. So for the actual collar I marked 1.5 inches and then I connected it just as shown. I have a detailed tutorial on how you can draft your collar and your collar stand. If you want to learn that, I will link it in the comment section down below. I didn't want this to be too long. So the next thing is to cut out your collar stand and your collar so that you can attach it to your fabric. So this collar stay has a shiny part which has a glue which you can attach with your iron. So I'm folding my fabric into two and then I'm just using my iron to glue the collar to the fabric. So once it's glued, you go ahead and cut it out, leaving allowance to sew around it. So now I've gone ahead to sew it. I'm going to further reduce my allowance so that when I turn, it's not going to be too bulky. So I'm cutting the hem as well. So from the end there, you're going to turn it out and make sure you bring out the sharp edges. So once it is brought out, you go over to your ironing again and then you give it a very good press. You need to iron very well so that it can come out neat and flat. So you're going to use your iron to press it down because collar stay is quite hard. So you need to iron it so that it can lay flat very well so that your collar can come out nice. So we are going to do the same thing for the collar stand as well. You fold your fabric into two and then iron the collar stand on your fabric. So once it is successfully ironed, make sure you add steam to it because it's hard so that it can glue it down very well. Once that is done, you are going to also I'm folding it into two so that I will have the same thing on both sides. So I am reducing the seam allowance over there before I sew my collar to my collar stand. So now you're going to notch the midpoint of the two and then you match the midpoint together. You can pin it down and then you take it to your sewing machine and then you just sew around it. It's easy to sew because you just follow the shape of your collar stay. So that is where you're going to sew and then you're going to turn it out. So once you turn this out again as well, you're going to iron it very flat. It's very important. If not, it's not going to lay well. So you take your time to add as much steam as you need and then you iron it very flat. So now I'm going to fold in the seam allowance that I have on my collar. There are several ways to do this, but I believe this is one of the easiest way. So on the collar stand, the seam allowance all around it, I'm going to fold it in so that I'm just going to tuck in my neckline inside the collar stand and then I'm going to top stitch on it. Like I said, there are several ways you can do this, but I believe this is very easy. Once you already use your iron to fold in your seam allowance, it makes the work easier for you. So you're going to bring in your shirt now and then just tuck the neckline inside the collar stand that you have already ironed. Can you see? And then I'm going to pin it all around before I sew. You can also sew without pinning, but it's always easier to pin. It makes the work easier for you to do. Once you have pinned it on the table, when you get to your when you get to your sewing machine, you just go ahead and sew it down. So I'm just taking my time to pin it, and when you are pinning, make sure that nothing is packing. Everything has to be spread out. Use your finger to feel it. Make sure that you are spreading it out properly. So once you sew it, your shirt is ready. You create your button hole, and then you fix your button, and this is what you have. It's very, very easy to do. Can you see how beautiful it is looking?